Right now, there are glaciers in Antarctica that are 2 miles thick. 2 miles. That's taller than Mount Everest. And 20,000 years ago, those glaciers covered half of North America. Half. The temperature wasn't just cold. It was negative 40 degrees. Negative 40 Fahrenheit and Celsius at the same time. So cold that your lungs would freeze if you took a deep breath. Your saliva would freeze before it hit the ground. Metal would shatter like glass. But here's the part that makes no sense. Here's the part that should be impossible. Humans didn't just survive this. Humans thrived. They hunted mammoths. They painted masterpieces on cave walls. They had music. They had culture. They had communities of thousands. While everything around them was literally frozen solid. Everything that lived froze. Everything that couldn't adapt died. But humans got smarter. And that's where the story gets insane. Because the reason humans survived the Ice Age isn't what scientists thought for 200 years. And when you learn what actually happened, you'll understand why humans didn't just survive. You'll understand why we became unstoppable. Let me paint a picture of what the Ice Age actually looked like. Not that. The Hollywood version. The real one. Imagine waking up tomorrow and the entire planet looks like Antarctica. The sky is perpetually gray. The sun is so weak it barely warms your face. Where you live, there's 12 months of winter and 0 months of summer. Plants don't grow. Trees freeze and snap like twigs. The ground is permanently frozen permafrost so deep that nothing can root. The only animals left are the ones built for this nightmare. Woolly mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, cave bears that weigh 1,000 pounds, dire wolves with jaws powerful enough to crush bone. Now imagine you're not a saber-toothed tiger. You're not a woolly mammoth. You're human. You're weak. You have no fur. You can't survive extreme cold biologically. Your body is designed for warmth, and you're surrounded by predators that outweigh you 10 to 1. According to every rule of evolution, you should be extinct, but you're not. In fact, between 25,000 and 10,000 years ago, when the Ice Age was at its absolute worst, human populations were increasing, not decreasing, increasing. Archaeological evidence shows that humans weren't just surviving in small, desperate groups. They were building settlements, complex ones, with art, with trade networks spanning thousands of miles, with tools so sophisticated they make you wonder how humans made them without electricity. So the question isn't, how did humans barely survive? The question is, how did humans become so dangerous that they conquered an entire frozen planet? And the answer changes everything. For the last 200 years, scientists had an answer to this question, and it was wrong. They said, humans survived because of better clothes. Better clothes, that's it. They developed better ways to sew, better insulation. And that's supposedly how weak, naked apes survived in negative 40-degree environments where every other primate would die in hours. But there's a massive problem with this explanation. A fatal problem. Neanderthals had the same clothing technology. They had fur. They had leather working. They had fire. They lived in Europe during the Ice Age for 300,000 years. And then, right when the Ice Age got worst, right when it would be most crucial to have superior adaptation, they went extinct. All of them gone. Meanwhile, humans exploded in population. If the explanation was better clothes, Neanderthals should have survived. I was too. They had clothes. They had fire. They were actually stronger and more muscular than humans, which would give them a survival advantage in extreme cold. So why didn't they make it? Scientists kept searching, and in 1987 they found something that changed everything. In 1987, researchers at University of California, Berkeley sequenced Neanderthal DNA for the first time. And they found something nobody expected. Neanderthals had mutations that actually made them more cold-resistant than humans. They had broader chests, larger nostrils better for breathing cold air, more muscle density, thicker bones. From a purely biological perspective, they were better adapted to the Ice Age than we were, but they died anyway. This sent shockwaves through the scientific community. If it wasn't biological adaptation, what was it? The answer came from an unexpected place: cave paintings. In 2008, archaeologist Jean-Michel Chevalin published a study on hand stencils found in caves across Europe and Australia from the Ice Age period. Hand stencils made by blowing pigment around hands. They're basically the original signature. What shocked researchers wasn't the hand stencils themselves, versus it was how many there were, thousands, from different caves, spanning 15,000 years. And the hands were getting progressively more detailed over time. Some caves had stencils showing injured hands missing fingers, old hands, young hands, all living and working together. This meant one thing. Humans were creating permanent records of themselves. They were leaving evidence of their existence. They were thinking about the future. They were thinking about being remembered. Neanderthals never did this. In fact, Neanderthal archaeological sites show almost no art, no decoration, no symbolic thinking. They hunted, they ate, they slept, they repeated. But humans were doing something they'd never done before. Humans were storytelling with their hands. And that small difference, that ability to imagine yourself as part of a larger narrative, that's what killed Neanderthals and made humans unstoppable. Here's what scientists discovered. The human brain during the Ice Age underwent a transformation, and we don't fully understand why it happened, but we know when it happened. Exactly when humans started thriving and Neanderthals started disappearing. A neuroscientist named Liana Ramachandran ran a series of experiments in the early 2000s. He showed that the human brain has a unique capability, theory of mind. It's the ability to imagine what someone else is thinking, to put yourself in another person's perspective, to predict behavior. Most animals can't do this. A dog doesn't wonder what you're thinking. A wolf doesn't strategize based on what the antelope might be feeling. They act on instinct, but humans can imagine the internal experience of another being. And that one ability changed everything. Here's why. When you're hunting a mammoth in negative 40-degree weather, the mammoths have advantages you can't match. They're bigger, stronger, faster. They have fur. You have a spear. But if you can imagine what the mammoth is thinking, where it might run, how it might react, what it fears, suddenly your spear becomes more effective than its size. You can set traps. You can predict movement. You can coordinate with other humans to box it in. You can cooperate based on mental models of what others are thinking and planning. Neanderthals hunted the same mammoths, but they hunted them individually. Neanderthal wounds on mammoth skeletons show close range spear injuries, one-on-one, which means Neanderthals were throwing themselves at animals 10 times their weight and hoping for the best. Humans hunted in organized groups. We found mammoth kill sites with evidence of coordinated strategy. Dozens of humans working together, surrounding, cutting off escape routes, using the terrain. That's not biology, that's imagination. And imagination meant you could survive anywhere, because you didn't need biological adaptation. You could think your way out of any problem. You could imagine solutions that didn't exist yet. Once humans had this advantage, this ability to imagine and cooperate, based on those imaginations, everything accelerated. In 2019, researcher Cedric Boquex at the University of Barcelona published research showing that the human language center, the part of the brain that processes grammar, actually comes from the same neural circuits as theory of mind, which means the ability to imagine other people's thoughts is literally the same ability that lets you speak grammar. And grammar is mind-blowingly powerful, because with grammar, you don't just tell someone, hunt mammoth tomorrow. You can say, if we hunt the mammoth from the west side tomorrow, when the wind is blowing east, it will smell us. So we should approach from the north instead. Here's the exact route I'm imagining in my head. You can transmit complex, imaginary scenarios through language. You can teach someone a strategy without them having to personally experience it. Suddenly, knowledge doesn't die with individuals. It compounds, it accumulates. You stand on the shoulders of everyone who came before you. That's why human technology accelerated so fast. Tools got better, weapons got better, clothing got better. Not because of random biological mutations, but because every generation could imagine improvements on what the previous generation imagined. And Neanderthals? They couldn't do that. Every Neanderthal basically had to reinvent the wheel. They had no cumulative culture, no imagination-based knowledge transfer. So when the Ice Age got worse, humans adapted by imagining new solutions. Neanderthals just died. Here's what's insane about this. The Ice Age didn't kill Neanderthals because humans were biologically superior. The Ice Age killed Neanderthals because humans were imaginatively superior. We could imagine futures, predict threats, coordinate based on mental models, tell stories about abstract concepts, build knowledge that lasted beyond our lifetime. And that ability, that single shift in how our brains worked, made us the most dangerous animal on the planet. Not our strength, not our speed, not our ability to survive cold. Our imagination. We're the only species that can imagine something that doesn't exist and then make it real. That's why we survived the Ice Age when every other animal was freezing to death. That's why we built civilizations when Neanderthals couldn't build anything. That's why we went from caves to space in 50,000 years. Not because we're naturally smarter, but because we can imagine what doesn't exist yet. And every single one of your ancestors survived the Ice Age because they had that ability. Because they could look at an impossible world and imagine a way through it. The question isn't, how did humans survive the Ice Age? The question is, what has your imagination made possible in your life? Because 20,000 years ago, your ancestors looked at negative 40-degree weather. They looked at predators 10 times their size. They looked at a frozen world where everything should have died. And instead of accepting that reality, they imagined a different one. They imagined hunts. They imagined strategies. They imagined stories to tell their children. They imagined themselves surviving, and they did. We are the descendants of the humans who didn't just survive the impossible. We are the descendants of humans who imagined the impossible and made it real. The Ice Age taught us that imagination isn't a luxury, it's survival, it's evolution, it's what makes us human. And that same ability that saved your ancestors is still inside you, right now, waiting to imagine something that doesn't exist yet and make it real.